Today's show, we have Jim Hinckley, an author of many books. He is a podcaster and has his own YouTube channel. He has traveled Route 66 extensively and he has so much to share with us. Thank you so much for being here, Jim.
My pleasure.
So, how many books have you authored?
22. The idea is I want to become a writer when I grow up. That's my goal.
That's a good goal to have. How long have you been passionate about Route 66?
Well, it's kind of a complicated, long story. You can cue the Twilight Zone music pretty much at any time, but most everything in my life of importance since about 1959 has been tied to Route 66. And I'm a blue collar background. I was always told that I had a gift for telling people where to go. And I was always fascinated with automotive history, old cars. That started as a quest to learn more about my grandfather. To me, Route 66 was a road, and I enjoyed driving when it was bypassed by the interstate. My mom said I was born 90 and I never got any older. I started writing in 1990, automotive mostly, pre World War II, 1885 to World War II automotive history. And then there was quite an overlap with the development of the U.S. highway system, including Route 66. And then as the Route 66 renaissance really started picking up steam in the 90s, I found myself being asked to write more and more about Route 66.
How many books do you have on just Route 66?
I've got about 10 books on Route 66, 12 now. The last one to be published was a real fun little title called Murder and Mayhem on the Main Street of America, Tales from Bloody 66. A little bit of a different perspective on the highway, not exactly light reading, give it a little bit of a different perspective.
I am really wanting to do a season on all of the fun, the scary stuff, and I plan on doing that towards Halloween in that time frame. So I may have to have you on here and I'm definitely going to get your book. Now, on your podcast, is it the same, the YouTube and the podcast, or are they two separate things?
Two separate things. The podcast is strictly interactive live audio, and then it's archived on the YouTube channel on the Jim Hinckley's America website, Spotify, and others. Also, that bleeds over as the audio onto my YouTube channel. I have educational videos I develop for the YouTube channel, and I've started a little series I'm playing with entitled In Search of Lost Highways that take people out on my morning walkabouts and my adventures to find remnants of Route 66, the National Old Trails Road, and well, the roads that even preceded that.
I want to jump into the history and all the fun things and the places that I've discovered in Kingman, but I have to know there's a statue of you in Kingman, right?
Yes, I was really honored and I was humbled by that. It was a project spearheaded by Kingman Main Street. It was a surreal event. It was kind of like attending my own funeral. Well, every time I drive by that, I feel like I'm attending my own funeral. That was unveiled in 2022 during National Road Trip Day celebrations. And it was really an honor. The sculptress for that was J. Ann Butler, lives in Cave Creek. She's originally from Wales, and she's internationally acclaimed, works in bronze and porcelain. And she's done work under commission for the Queen of England, the Royal Gardens in Luxembourg. So I was doubly honored by that.
Wow. At least you know that you're honored, and most people don't get honored until they pass away, and you were honored in this life. So tell me, inside of Kingman, they have this adorable old hotel called the Brunswick. And then there's also the Beale. Can you tell me
Mhm.
what history you might have on that? I have some cool video footage to share, but I want to hear what you know about it because I really haven't researched it very much.
Well, both hotels are pretty interesting, and it's amazing they've survived. The Brunswick Hotel is being redeveloped by a Swiss property developer. The Hotel Beale is still in limbo. We just keep trying to do things, and they're both really interesting. The Beale Hotel is, well, they're both territorial era hotels. The Beale Hotel is actually older, it dates to 1900. And when you look at it, the front half, the two-story section, that was built 1900, and then the three-story section in the back was a big remodel in 1916. It was bought by Thomas Devine in 1906. For us old timers, we remember Andy Devine. If you're over 65, you remember Andy, and if you don't, you might as well be talking about some obscure movie star like Harry Carey from 1918. But Andy Devine was a character actor, starred in hundreds and hundreds of movies and TV shows, Twilight Zone, Flipper, gosh, you name it. He was with Stagecoach with John Wayne, had a really unique voice. He was quite famous. His father owned the Hotel Beale. 1955, Front Street in Kingman, which was Route 66, On a special edition of This Is Your Life, Front Street was renamed Andy Devine Avenue. Andy Devine was only one of the celebrities associated with the Hotel Beale. I mentioned Harry Carey, and that's not just something you do when your 401k plummets to zero value. Harry Carey was a pioneering Western movie star, and he filmed a movie. In fact, several movies were filmed at Tap Duncan's ranch out by Hackberry, Arizona, which later became Route 66. That was in 1918. The movie was Ace of the Saddle. Him and his film crew stayed at the Hotel Beale. 1925, Buster Keaton, the silent movie star, filmed the movie at Tap Duncan's Lake Valley Ranch, and that was Go West, and he stayed at the Hotel Beale. Louis L'Amour, the Western travel writer that everybody's famous with, in the 1920s, he was working out at the Catherine Mines, west of Kingman along the Colorado River, and he had a bout of amateur boxing. And he had a boxing ring in the sump bar under the Beale, and that's where he started his amateur boxing career. I can't verify this as of yet, but the legend is he went a few rounds with Jack Dempsey. All I can confirm is that Jack Dempsey was a guest of the Hotel Beale. Then we also had in 1928-29, BAT Airlines was established, Transcontinental Air Transport. It was the first coast-to-coast passenger air service, and it combined rail travel with air travel. And it just totally transformed cross-country travel. Involved with that, one of the pioneers, one of the big investors and developers of that was Charles Lindbergh. One of the places that was set up along Route 66 and the railroad was Port Kingman, was the terminal. By the way, that building is still here in Kingman. Well, Charles Lindbergh was a frequent guest at the Hotel Beale during construction of the Port Kingman terminal. And at the ribbon cutting, he and Amelia Earhart were both guests at the hotel. Andy Devine brought his good friend Will Rogers over for a New Year's party that was at the Hotel Beale. The Brunswick is kind of an interesting story. John Mulligan and his partner built that hotel about 1907. A lot of stories, no concrete reason. They had been involved in a lot of development here in northwestern Arizona at the turn of the century. Shortly after building this hotel, they had a falling out. Story is over a gal. So they literally divided the hotel. They put a wall down the middle of it. You get the bar, I get the restaurant. You get half the hotel, I get the other half. And it stayed that way until the 1950s. There's a little celebrity association with that hotel as well. Just like with travelers on Route 66, the National Old Trails Road became very, very popular with tourists because it provided access to things like the Painted Desert, Native American villages, the Grand Canyon. In 1915, the Panama Pacific Exposition in California, more than 20,000 people attended that event from outside the state. They arrived by automobile, and a lot of them drove the National Old Trails Road. Well, one of those guests, one of those travelers was, are you familiar with Edsel? I don't mean the car that looks like a Buick sucking a lemon. Edsel Ford was Henry Ford's son. He and his college buddies in the summer of 1915, they traveled the National Old Trails Road and they stayed at the Hotel Brunswick. The wedding reception, a little quick impromptu party for Clark Gable and Carol Lombard, that was held at the Brunswick Hotel.
Wow, so much history. So the Brunswick has been bought and they're renovating it because that's when I got to go inside. It's some of the video footage that I have while they were actually just getting started on it. There was a piano on the right, and then you go upstairs to the hotel. And then there was a bar next to that. Was that originally part of the hotel?
Well, it's been changed a lot over the years. Originally, there was a bar and restaurant. The front desk was over by the stairs where it's at now. The stairs had been altered over the years, a different configuration. When it was cut in two, they walled up the doorway between the bar that was on the side of the reception desk and then the restaurant. The developer has now put that back together, and Garibaldi's restaurant is next door in the Old Trails Garage. That was originally the Arizona store, 1910. And Luigi Garibaldi, he's Italian. Anyway, Luigi Garibaldi has this restaurant, and now they've expanded his restaurant. They've cut a wall into the hotel, into the old restaurant, and he has the Arizona store next to the Old Trails Garage and half of the downstairs of the Brunswick Hotel as his restaurant.
Wow. So back to the Beale for just a moment, because that I could not get into. Of course, it was boarded up and closed. But you said there was a bar underneath the hotel.
Yeah, there was the Nighthawk Saloon was upstairs right off the lobby, and then downstairs was the Sump Bar. The door is still there. It's boarded over, but the door is still there down there. There was a barber shop and a bar downstairs. And another one you might have missed, but right next to the Brunswick, between the Brunswick and Beale Hotel, is Sportsman's Bar. That is an absolute territorial era time capsule. It's a saloon that dates to about 1906, and that place is still going strong.
I actually went in there for just a moment. A very sweet young lady was running the counter, and I just had asked if she had any information on them. The Beale, do you happen to know if anybody owns it or is it for sale maybe?
That's a real complicated thing, and this happens in towns, not just on Route 66, but towns everywhere. Family has owned that for 60, 70 years. It's been a point of contention. They're very nice people, somewhat eccentric. Half of them wanted to restore the place, the other half didn't want to put any money in it, they wanted it sold. So as a result, nothing's been done. It's really in a state of limbo right now. The matriarch of the family, Teddy, she just passed away 93 years old. So now it's an estate situation. The inside is remarkably intact. It's really surprising how well preserved the inside is. In fact, most of the custom furniture that was acquired from California in 1916 remodel, most of it is stacked upstairs on the mezzanine.
You mentioned that Andy Devine, was he an owner?
Yeah, his father, Thomas Devine, he bought the Hotel Beale in 1906, and Andy just grew up there. The family had a house here in Kingman, but Andy pretty much grew up around the hotel. He had a shoe shine stand there. He was always a character actor, never a main actor, but his voice was very distinctive. But he did a lot of movies, Mad Mad World with Spencer Tracy, lots of John Wayne movies. Had a radio program on a pioneering children's television program. He put together a very pioneering kind of a Mr. Rogers type program in the 1940s and early 1950s. He was on Twilight Zone, and he started out in silent movies, actually. He left here, went to college, originally Flagstaff and then California, and was a football player. And he was discovered in California and then got into movie acting and a few other things. He became an accomplished pilot. He opened a flight school for training in World War II, went on to all kinds of things. But he'd come back quite often. Andy Devine Days here in Kingman is still a celebration of our Western heritage. We have a PRCA rodeo attached to that and a few other things. And up until he passed away in the 1970s, he generally came over for the parade every year.
What time of the year is that parade?
That's in September, usually mid-September,
Okay.
usually the second or third weekend.
I always stop in Sligman. Where would you recommend people to stay or look or research in the Kingman area?
On your trip, did you drive through Oatman by chance?
I did, not this time, but my friend Rosie in Fenders, she had me
Yes.
go years ago. So I actually had been through Oatman.
Well, isn't that nice? Oatman is great. It's nice to see that not all the asses are in Washington. But I digress. That drive from the Colorado River from Topok, that's the pre-1952 alignment of Route 66. It's also the National Old Trails Road. But that section of road up through Oatman, down through the Sitgreaves Pass, and I'm kind of prejudiced. I grew up out there. I learned to drive out there, learned to ride a bicycle. That is probably one of the most scenic sections of Route 66. Stevie Wonder would have a problem taking a bad photo out there. I guarantee you. It's just absolutely spectacular.
You have to be the most sassy person I've had so far.
My pa always said, better to fill your head with useless knowledge than no knowledge at all. Topok started out as Needles, Arizona. And when the post office closed, the town closed in the 1870s period, then the town of Needles, California was built. Well, Needles, Arizona had another boom spell around the turn of the 20th century. They tried to reopen the post office as Needles, and they wouldn't accept it. They had to come up with another name, so they came up with Topok, which was a Mojave word for river crossing. You mentioned Hackberry. A little something for you. Next time you go to Hackberry, a lot of people are familiar with the Hackberry General Store, but that's relatively new. That dates to about 1936. And if you look across to the south of the railroad tracks, you can see some old buildings down there. That was the town of Hackberry. And originally, Route 66 National Trails Road went through the town of Hackberry. And there is an absolutely wonderful two-room Spanish-style schoolhouse back there dating to 1917 and 18. And that was the last two-room schoolhouse in Arizona, closed in the 1990s. That's a neat old town. At one point back at the 19th century, they even considered Hackberry as the county seat for Mojave County.
I did go into Hackberry Little General Store, and they have so much to see there, so I highly recommend if you get a chance, take that route and go check out that little general store. But I noticed it said Town of Hackberry. It looked like the road was maybe closed or not. It was questionable. So I was in a car at the time, not a big truck or anything. I was a little nervous, but you can get in there pretty easily. It's not
Yeah,
washed out or
yeah.
anything.
It depends on what day it is. Yeah, there's a couple of ways you can get to Hackberry pretty easy. There's a turnoff just before the Hackberry General Store off Route 66 to the west of the store that goes onto the railroad tracks. There's another one just past up by the Valentine gas station. Signed as the Wickiup Road. But if you turn off there, you can come back in through Hackberry. And going back to Kingman real quick, too, I'll throw this out. Your listeners might find this of interest because we were talking about the Hotel Beale and Kingman.tours is the website. I've been working with Kingman Main Street to develop a narrated, self guided historic district walking tour for downtown Kingman. It's an interactive, but it's designed to be a virtual tour of Kingman as well as a physical tour. So if you're in jail in Joliet and you still have internet connection, now you can take a tour of Kingman.
Goodness. Yes, that's a great time to start checking out Route 66 so that when you get out of jail, you can hop on and start exploring. That is such great advice. You're just fun. I think I'm gonna have to start having coffee with you, Jim. When does your podcast air, and when does all the good stuff happen on YouTube and the coffee with Jim?
Well, Coffee with Jim actually has a schedule, which is kind of unusual for my world, but it's 7 o'clock Sunday mornings, Arizona time. And we do it as a live interactive program, which makes for a lot of fun because, first of all, I bluff my way through. I'm figuring out technology as I go. And the other is all the quirky stuff that goes with internet connections and cell phone connections. The idea of the program was to give a platform for event organizers, community organizers, tour companies, authors, artists, sharing America's story and inspiring road trips by telling people where to go. I did one program where one of the guests was in Portland, Oregon, and the other guest was in Croatia, and trying to juggle those two connections, that was kind of entertaining. We have just an array of guests. Everybody recently, we had Carrie Barrick with the Oklahoma Department of Commerce talking about the Route 66 Centennial Project, Casey Claypool with Illinois Scenic Byways, Bob Bosbell from True West Magazine. We've been working with Marian Pavel. He's out of Bratislava, Slovakia, and he's developing the very innovative Route 66 navigation app and the Mother Road Route 66 passport.
He's got a great group on Facebook. I've actually reached out to him to do an interview. I would love to have him on. Also, another great group that I love is the Route 66 postcards. Those people are fabulous. They're like, use whatever you want of our photos. If you want to give us credit, that's great. These are some really great resources for you to explore and ask questions. Thank you, Jim, for being on
You
here.
bet.
I really am so grateful. And thank you guys for tuning in, and plan your trips today and make it a part of your vacation, staycation, whatever it is. Come and join us on Route 66.